evening, everyone. I'm Haisang Javanalikhikara, curator and lecturer from Faculty of Fine and Applied Art, Chulalongkorn University. I would like to welcome you all this evening, this afternoon, or this morning to some of you to a session, to an event, a discussion of how do artists need curator. Today we have Heman Chong, Arin Rungjang, and Thao Ngyun Phan with us. So I would like to welcome you all and these three artists with us. Please welcome. Okay, maybe first I would like to have the artists introduce themselves, but in the questions that I already have in mind, so we have this, these questions would lead to the next questions about working with curators as well. First, I would like to ask Arin that you've been working as artist since the late 90s, and for decades that you've been having international exposure as artist, academic, and in various like artistic communities in so many boards. Can you please share your first experience, like how have the curators assisted you, help you with the journey at all, or are you like working as artist and established on your own?
Thank you, Nong Im นะครับให้แสง My name is Arin Rungjang. I'm an artist from Thailand and I've been working since 90s. Like you said, it seems like decade and I feel like old already. But actually, I mean, when I got your questions, I first realized, and I would like to start it with this kind of philosophical idea behind your questions, which is also the question of ontology too. I mean, related, because like you cannot one object cannot existing, right? And one role cannot existing too, and the whole thing has to be existing together in sorry, my dog is so loud.
No.
sorry.
Just want to see as well. No worries. Yeah.
My dog is so loud. This is good. This is formal. Please stop. Okay. So this idea of like one so I mean we have different social entirety in our seamless total. So for example, if we talk about country, we cannot reduce country into region, and we cannot reduce region into city. We cannot reduce city into community, into hospital, into school, into museum, and we cannot reduce parts of each of us into individual, because each of parts has to interact together to make this seamless totality work as it is. So for me, curators, they are part of this whole thing, as well as an artist as well. And I think I mean, my way of thinking in this way was because I started my artwork not from canvas, right? So I started my artwork from space, from place, from context. And it's going to be your next question about my first exhibition that I started to work with. So to work with space and place and context, I can't avoid the totality of place. So I cannot take part of curator or people or viewer or installer or even light installer out of my totality as well. So for me, like your question based on my philosophical idea, this seamless totality, I think curators are very important to complement this. I would use this word, I mean, taken from a philosopher, emergent properties. So emergent property is when the H2 and O combination together and they create water, right? And sometimes when you when you blow oxygen or you throw water into fire, the fire just ceased existing of fire or something like that. So this happened in nature and also in human social ontology as well. So we can't avoid to accept this transformation from this seamless totality as the world and apply it into human culture, apply it into social entirety, and apply it into our art world. I mean, art institution and so on and so on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we'll have the next question that is quite more relevant to this. Maybe I could ask Thao to introduce yourself a little bit before we go into the next questions. Thao, I've always fancied your work since the beginning of your career. Most of the time you work with organic materials, sharing personal narrative to reflect public's social issue. Then you continue your study at School of Fine Arts Institution of Chicago in paintings and drawings. Are there any significant changes you faced after returning to Vietnam, and how was the support from curators and community, if there's any?
Hello, my name is Thao Ngyun Phan, and I am a visual artist, and I based in Vietnamese visual artist, and I based in Saigon in Vietnam, and I think I would like to talk a little bit about my first experience knowing what the concept of a curator is, and that was around 2006 2007 when in Saigon in Ho Chi Minh City there used to be an event called Saigon Open City SOC, and it was imagined to be like the first Saigon Biennale, and actually it was the two curators was from Thailand, with Krithia and Grit. And also when I was a student, at that time I was a first year student, and I was just studying very traditional academic painting in the fine art school in Saigon. Of course, in Saigon, the school is very academic, very based on technique. They have faculties like painting and sculpture and printmaking, but they don't have anything that relate to curatorship. So when I came to visit Saigon Open City, and it was my first time seeing like contemporary international exhibitions, and I came to many talks that is that is organized by uh, curators like Krithia or Grit. Also, I met people like Ong Ken Shen from Singapore also came and gave a talk there. And I also listened to active curators at that time who gave talks such as Trần Lươn from Hanoi or Như Huy from Saigon. And I was very intrigued by how an exhibition is organized. And that was for me a totally new concept because I never seen such a thing in the art school or like the arts museum in Saigon. There's no curated exhibitions. So I think that was one of the reasons that kind of give me a great curiosity to try to go outside of the educational system in Vietnam. So indeed, before I came to Chicago, I came to Singapore for 2 years to study in the LaSalle College of Arts. And when I come, and then after that, I came to Chicago, but I still very attracted to the medium of painting. So I graduated from painting from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And when I came back to Vietnam around 2014, I was also have a very important experience. as a resident artist at the Sun Art Laboratory at Sun Art, and at that time it was directed by Zoe Butt. So I think from the whole so-called educational process, I'm very intrigued by how curator work with artists, and I always very willing to learn from what curator could do to an exhibition. So for me, curators is very important, at least within my own practice. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And we would go to the next, there's another set of questions. So before that, I would like Heman to introduce himself a bit. So Heman, your practice is very conceptual with texts and books along with photographs and paintings. So have curators been assisting you with the research, or can you share who were your key influences as young artists, and did you see a lot of exhibitions? Did you have your favorite curators that you like to follow?
Hi, my name is Heman. I'm from Singapore, and I've been working as an artist since 1999. One of the defining things about my practice in relationship to curators is that every single one of my project is different. So for example, when I start working on something, I never know what that idea would lead me to. And I don't have a master plan, so I always make things up as I go along. So in a way, the curators that I work with are often people who I think of as collaborators more than administrators. So they're not there to like help me buy plane tickets or book hotel room or, you know, like not like daily stuff, because I can do that all myself. I'm more interested in the curator as number one, a kind of ally that can help me think about the work. So in many situations, I'm also giving part of the authorship to the curator. And because I feel very strongly that the relationship between the curator and the artist is not that of the master and the slave, you know what I mean? And that the curator is not there to like only fulfill every need of the artist. And I feel that it is also very, very important for the artist to have a kind of way of listening to the curator and to allow that conversation to happen in order to make the work much more complex. So I think that's where I'm coming from whenever I work with a curator. But to be honest, like having said that, there are some curators who don't want to work with me because it's too complex, you know, it's too messy, it's too difficult. So there's never a kind of middle ground for me. It's either you like the way I work or you don't like the way I work. And if you don't like the way I work, then we don't work together. It's just as simple as that, you know. So I'm interested in these kind of complexities because I believe that what I am trying to do is to sort of expand like the meaning of things away from what is already assumed of in society. So for example, I'm not interested in working with curators who, for example, essentialize Asia. And it's something that I'm very against. I'm not interested in curators who are only sort of thinking about strip mining or extracting ideas behind identity in order to produce exhibitions, because I very strongly believe that identity is something that is in flux and it's always changing, and it's not something that we can just easily essentialize and to represent, you know. So there are all these different concerns, that I think about a lot. And in fact, I'm extremely selective of the people I work with. And I'm also not shy to like kill a relationship in the middle of the project because sometimes it doesn't work, you know. So having said that, you know, it's a way of working that is somehow based much more on improvisation and conversation and spending time together and to really think about what that form would take, what the form of the project would take at the end. Because it's always, for me, it's always important that the process of the artwork is a journey and that this journey is not planned, you know? So it's always a way of navigating through these situations in which are often somehow found, you know, and discovered along the way.
So you've worked with curators, like sometimes you have them as your advisors as well. I mean, how did it happen at the beginning? What is like spontaneous, someone approach you or something like that? Or and changes when you've been working closely with curators? You see that you said that you are like quite selective as well. And what was happening?
I think the starting point is always excuse me, the starting point is always friendship. And I think that it's something very social. Most of the curators I met at a bar, I guess. Or in a very social situation, you know. So I also don't work academically. I also refuse to work academically because my work is not about intellectualizing the world. My work is about perceiving the world. You know, so it's not something that is interesting for me to work within that system. So what I'm trying to say is that a lot of these advising or collaborating comes very naturally for me or not. You see what I mean? So it's a bit like having a relationship with somebody that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. And you also question why it works and why it doesn't work. And for me, it's always messy and unruly and wild almost. And sometimes the curator becomes a book editor. Sometimes the curator becomes a bookseller or a librarian, you know? So things like that, that it's very interesting for me to sort of like experience different levels of these relationships, you know?
Okay, thank you. So
you're welcome.
Yeah, so we would go back to Arin's question to Kun Arin's that so you've done some long-term projects developing with curators, researching and maybe publishing together as well. What have you learned from such a long-term shared development process?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Heman. I mean, I agree when he said like he started to work with curators from a relationship or very good friendship. I have that way as well, and always when you put yourself in one role, right, like artist, curator, policeman, nurse, and you have to habitate your routine, your activity into that role every day, and it's so boring. I mean, there's a concept of curator and artist in a different period of time. There's a concept of curator maybe started from really modern time, or even before there's no curator, there's something else, that art patron, there's, I don't know, priest and some other kind of role in society. And probably this concept of curator happened to fit in this current society. And everybody have to put their own roles into that bunch of organization. I mean, bunch of people in that organization. and each of people who work in that organization have to interact differently. So one thing that I have learned from, I would say, I would call her name Kittiya most of the time, that, you know, like as an artist, I've been really busy with material, with space, with story, with all this stuff. I never been busy to like audiences or, you know, like who is coming to this museum tomorrow or the day after, uh, a younger generation, children or older people. And when I talked to Vidya, she told me that she has to deal with all of these people differently, and she had to communicate and interact with them, which is not my part. And then I listened to her part, and I listened to what she's been doing and working, and building that conversation is not a conversation that created by a concept, you know, a concept of curator, a concept of artist, but it is a conversation that came from our good relationship. And I think this is very important because you know, like we cannot talk to the people with just only like linguistic language. Like I have a concept, I have an ideas, I have an ideas about how can I get more audiences into an exhibition. I have a concept to deliberate or articulate your work into different audiences, kind of audiences. But we talk more like friends, like brother sister, which is I think is really really important. And this practices has been growing up from relationship more than from a concept or from, you know, like we are going to be a smarter curator and artist. We are going to like rule the whole art institution or something, or make the best art in the world or something like that. But we go relationship from that conversation. And most importantly, we talk, we share the same interest in. I think that's really important. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I can ask Thao as well. Do you have the similar situations when you work with curators? Like, what's differences when you work with curators and developing your own project? And how do you test your idea with curators, sharing ideas and researching? And I know that you also support curators in your community as well. Like, who are they and what are the roles that you play with them?
I think I found the similarities with Arin in terms of I like to work with curators who are like we have like a very close relationship with. Um, for at the beginning of my career when I was still a student, I experimented a lot with performance art, and I didn't know anything about performance, but through a Vietnamese curator, then somehow it becomes like sometimes the curator could be the mentor because the curator knows a lot about art history in the region or Western art history. And I didn't have a chance to study art history properly in the art school because of the educational system in Vietnam. So I have to learn from the curator. So the curator somehow become the mentor. And later on, when I started to work with other projects that involved like unofficial history, folklore, um, I um, I developed a very close relationship with one of the curators who are still one of my mentor and best friend now, Zoe Butt. And my first solo exhibition in 2017 at the Factory Contemporary Art Center is called Poetic Amnesia. And even though I call it my exhibition, but somehow for me it's like a collaboration with Zoe because somehow we're kind of learning together and like unraveling all of these history that are so hidden, that are so manipulated, traumatized, and we embark together on this adventure that we don't really know the concrete result. So somehow I kind of like wouldn't mind to be very fragile and like share everything and ask for all of the comments, all of the thoughts, and all of the perspective from the Vietnamese growing up in Vietnam, and maybe like a foreigner who came to Vietnam and worked there, different types of perspective. So I guess that way is like a very intimate way of working together. But I also wouldn't mind to work with curators who I actually never met. Like I'm not so, like I have to say I'm not so selective. Like I'm just like very open to art, like any like I just have this curiosity to know about the world and to know about people. And sometimes there are exhibitions that you never met the curator. Like sometimes the exhibition is so big that you just meet the assistant curator by email or just meet them on Zoom for like one time. And then you just have to kind of navigate on your own within this like very large mega exhibition. But somehow I can feel like I can learn a lot from that. And that kind of working with curator is like not an intimate relationship, but it's like a keep me constantly in flux, like keep adapting and changing and imagine how the mind of the curator is working. So I feel like I enjoy both way of working, intimately and also distantly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I can say that most artists who are working with curators have this sort of like relationships as friendships with curator that grow with them since the beginning of the career as well, right? Yeah. Okay. Actually, I have been doing some readings about Heman. So you've been working as curator as well. So how do you work as a curator? Differentiate from your work as an artist, and are they the same?
I'm just going to be very honest with you. Every time I play the role of a curator, I'm always at the wrong place at the wrong time. So someone would just say, "You do it," you know. And actually, I don't want to do it, but because there's no one else to do it, so I will do it, you know.
Yeah.
So, but having said that, curating for me is a very organic process. And for example, I worked for 2 years with Daphne Ayers and Mimi Brown between Melly Kunst Institute Melly in Rotterdam and Spring Workshop in Hong Kong. And for me, that was a very, very organic process where nobody really understood what their roles are, basically. So sometimes we will invite an artist, then this artist will become a musician. And sometimes we will invite a curator, and sometimes this curator will become, like more like a writer, you know. So what I'm trying to say is actually the roles between people that exist in my universe are very porous, and they always are capable of transforming from one thing to another. So, for example, one of my longest standing relationships with a curator is with Pauline Yao at M+. And I think at the very base of that relationship is a very, very intense friendship. Like we chat every day, you know, on WeChat. And it really goes beyond like working on the project it's really about life. You know what I mean? And I feel that whether we like it or not, the the sort of like the life and the work of an artist can often become very lonely and very very self-contained. And I think I also build these relationships with curators so that I don't feel so lonely. And it's also to have a conversation that is much more really about life, rather than about art for me, because I feel that art is really only one way out of like thousands of ways to produce meaning. So, for example, someone I respect a lot is Kim Son-jung, who lives in Seoul. And I think she's a very interesting curator because she also functions as a patron and also as a kind of a politician, policy maker, So I think that model is interesting for me because it's not really only about one thing. It's not only about being an academic or art historian or writer or producer, but sometimes it's all of the above. And I'm interested in this idea of all of the above because for me, life is a very messy affair. And I don't see why working in the art world should be, like sterile and clean and professional. Not that we shouldn't be professional, but I think this professionalism should also be rethought of in relationship to these relationships. Did I answer your question? Is that clear?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so every one of you here have worked in the big institutions and small projects. So what are the main differences and similarities in your eyes? Is there differences between how curators of training in maybe, I don't want to say West and non-West, but they have this particular differences as well. So maybe you can tell us a bit more, and how do they work with artists when you work like abroad and closer to home, like in Southeast Asia? And does the context of curator matter to you? So maybe I start with Thao. You have exhibited extensively in the past decades. However, you have had many more exhibitions abroad than at home. Can you share why is this the case? And can you point out main differences you have acknowledged on the kind of projects you work on more closely with curators? Can you please give us some example?
I it's hard to explain, but I think the so-called like the art system in my country, it does not have the right infrastructure yet to support the kind of work that I do, or to support contemporary art in general. So even though I love to exhibit in Vietnam, and I exhibit in Vietnam many times, but I think people from outside of Vietnam know more about the exhibitions overseas because maybe it is in English, so people can access the news easier. And I also feel like the kind of subject matter that I am dealing with in my work many times is related to Vietnam history, but not the kind of official history that is popularized in the textbook. but like alternative history. And I think the institutions in Vietnam doesn't have this space to allow this kind of subject matter to be widely circulated within the context of the country. And I also think that like when I was studying in Vietnam, being an artist is like a very romantic idea. Like we go to school and we try to make very original painting or sculpture, and that's the only thing that I have to do. But I have to say that somehow with the professionalization of art education, for example, with the master degree program, that somehow we have to pay so much in order to get a master degree, in order to teach in a university, or in order to be professional artists, then being an artist or working in contemporary art is no longer this kind of very poor and romantic idea of kind of free spirit bohemian, but it's become somehow like a job that it has its own application. Like for example, in Vietnam, nobody taught me how to do like a critique or introduce yourself, or like when you apply for a residency, you have to select like 10 images, and each images is like 300 DPI, that kind of thing. And this is like very practical things that most artists are educated in Vietnam, for example, don't study. And somehow with the so-called like Western educated art school students who came back, they have this privilege of English speaking and a very professional way of thinking about art education and how to be an artist. And that is why for me it becomes a kind of opportunities to expose internationally. But it doesn't mean that the artist that is educated in the West are any time or any better or any more interesting than the artist or the curator that is working or not speaking English, or working only within the context of the country. It's just it's just a different system. Yeah. I don't know if I explained clearly, but yeah.
Yes, you will. Thank you very much. So yeah, that's a question from the audience. So I'll be asking this afterwards after we finish all the questions here. Okay. So next question, the similar questions, but let me expand a bit for Heman. Since you've been working as curator, artist, project producer, writer, maybe can you please give us some example of the projects that you feel like you need to work closely with the curators, and project that you feel like curators are not very much presented?
Oh, okay. I once made a magazine with a curator. It's called Stationery. It was made out of Spring Workshop, and I did it with Christina Lee. And it was a very intense project because we were like fighting every day about what this magazine is or not. And actually, this is something that's very important for me, again, to somehow have a partner to like play ping pong with, to think about like what something is or what something is not, you know? So I also work with Mami Katoka to teach a course for her course in Kyoto, at the University of Kyoto, Art and Design. And I think Mami is always a very interesting curator for me because she's always taking on so much, you know? She's like the director of a museum, she's running a academic program, but she's also like, you know, like chair of CIMAM. But at the same time, if you text Mami Katoka on her phone, you will get a reply in 3 minutes. You know what I mean? It's kind of interesting that she's in a way always keeping this open channel to the artists whenever this, you know, we need to sort of like talk about something. And I find that a kind of very interesting and kind and generous position to have. I guess what I'm trying to say is that these relationships are not fixed, you know, and it really depends on the artwork that you're making in relationship to the institution that you're showing with, in relationship to the persona and character of the curator. Just to reiterate my point, I think it's important that curators have their own agency, that they're not, again, the slave to the project. You know, I always tell curators who work with me, like, please don't kill yourself for the project. It's stupid, you know? And I hate this exhaustion, you know, like some artists love to like torture the curator by making them do crazy things, trying to like, you know, destroy the museum or the space or something. And actually, I'm totally against this because I don't believe in the exhausting the resources that we all share. Like, for example, if you destroy the gallery, the space, then the next artist is going to suffer because the budget is going to come out of his budget, his or her or their budget, you know? So you have to think not only about your exhibition, actually, you have to think about the exhibition after your exhibition and the exhibition before your exhibition, because these are also concerns that affect everyone. It's an ecology that we live in. It's not like you're only there to make your work, you know? Sometimes I feel that the problem with artists is that they always believe so strongly in their journey that they don't understand that this journey is someone else's trauma, you know? And I think that's terrible. So what I'm trying to really encourage with the people that I work with is to really consider like the larger picture, you know? And you can, when you're working on projects, you cannot only look at one tree, you have to look at the forest, you know?
Yeah, thank you. So I think it's quite it's quite clear that how the work with curators and the artists have different sort of relationships and mentorship, or maybe some sort of love-hate relationship as well for some artists. So we'll go back to maybe other questions later. For the same set of idea, can I ask Arin, like, I just went to see your exhibition, was it Oblivion, right, at Nova Gallery last year, and I understand that you didn't have curator for that exhibitions, but you work rather very closely with the gallery in developing the project from your researches. So what are the differences of your practice when working with curator and without, or is scale of the project matter as well? And how was it like working in exhibition back here in Thailand? Because we talked just now that you've been back in Thailand for 2 years already, but you've been working abroad for like so many years, and then it's the very first exhibitions that you work here in Thailand. So what are there? Can you give us some comparisons or maybe explanation on that?
Okay, so this exhibition Oblivion, it was just started. I would maybe tell one long story short of one of my work, the work trajectory. And you know, like it's not thanks, sorry. It's like so we don't have this sharp line before. we live like very blur, very smooth, very fuzzy, trans-married between one community to another community. And it's become very sharp like during modern time, and we started to divide it and clear territory as well. Not just the country, but also art space and space in museums, space in movie theater as well. So this work is Bengawan Solo. It was started in when I was young, when I was very young, when I was like 20, 22, I don't remember exactly. Oh no, sorry, 20, 23, because it's in 2000, 24 or something. I don't remember my age exactly. So when I watched this movie from Wong Kar-wai in the movie theater, which is curated by, I don't know, a promoter of that movie company or anyone. So the song Bengawan Slow was really impressed, and I rely on that song for my love experience with a guy that I fell in love during that time, and it embedded in my memory since. Then when Arya Swatika, who run an gallery, which is a small gallery in Jogja, invited me to do a residency there. So I went there with that memory because it was a strong memory. I mean, at first, I didn't know this Bengawan Solo is related to Indonesia because it's in Chinese version in Wong Kar-wai movie. And I have no idea where it came from. Later, I learned that this song Bengawan Solo was originated by a guy who created this song in Indonesia and inspired by the river, right, called Bengawan. So when I was there in Indonesia working with Arya Swatika, so you see this is a small gallery, right? There's no expectation of the huge exhibition or anything. And I came with that song Bengawan Solo, and I tried to find a way to connect to the environment to the milieu of that place. So I met Rachel Swati, and Rachel opened her bar, and also her bar play Keroncong, which is Indonesian traditional kind of band, 1 day a week. And she happened to be a daughter of one of the Sultan daughter, and married with a very famous Indonesian poet. So we started to discuss about this, and I asked her to perform Bengawan Solo, and I got her memory included into my memory too. So we share this memory contingently, without expectation, right? And then I create this work, and then it happened to be at Jakarta Biennial. So I show this work in Jakarta Biennial, and then Philip Perrotte saw that work, and he happened to be one of the director or curator in that edition of Jakarta Biennial. So when I went to Germany, he invited me to show this work at a Porticus, which is one of the big institutions in Germany. And I mean, one of the famous institutions in Germany, not that big, it's a pretty small institution. But then what relationship that Philip had with me, Rachel, Bengawan Solo was, he married with Indonesian woman. His wife is Indonesian, right? So we share the whole memory together through all this journey. And later I showed this work in some other places. Recently I showed this work at Gunford by the invitation of Sipora elders, who is going to be a chief curator of Copious Ball this year. And she's the director of the Gunford at the moment. We met in Berlin during my farewell party, and we started to talk about our life, our memory. So her parents came from Indonesia, and they were in the same concentration camp together with Anneke Gronwo, who a Dutch singer just died recently. and made this song Bengawan Solo famous in Netherlands. So we share that same memory as well, right? So in this case, like the whole world has been divided, and we have this sharp territory, and we have a very strong identity as a country. And but anyway, this trajectory of my work and also the song that inspired, which is started by a guy who loved that river, and he actually made this song in praising how nature is so important for human. And then that river was a place that a lot of Chinese dead body dumped into during the massacre, right? So our this relationship has been sharing, but not within the territory that we create, not within the concept, but we are sharing that same memory, that same experience with our life. So I would say a small institution or big institution or experience with small gallery or big gallery, non-waste or waste, it doesn't matter, you know, because we've been fucked by the Second World War, we've been fucked by this colonialism, we've been fucked by imperialism, and we've been like evacuated from one place to another place, and we could not choose. My father was hit in Germany, so that's my answer, I think. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So from what you three of you are saying, I would conclude that for you the scales or the geological are not really matter on how the work curators do, but rather, I mean, with you, but rather the relationship, the fondness, and the sense of closeness that you guys have with curators, and maybe the extensiveness of that particular curators, like how are they working with that project as well. I would I would conclude that. If you not agree, you can say that, but I would think that it's the curators themselves, how they work, how they do the research, and how they put the have the input with the projects, with the artists, and the closer the relationship, the similarities you have with curators, like how you click with curators are more relevant to how you work with curators. Okay, thank you. Another question actually is quite similar. It's the comparison questions as well. Like you, all of you have worked with the commercial galleries and the non-commercial ones. So how the approach of the commercial and non-commercial of the curators you've been working with, are the curators expecting you to do something like having the potential of sale, or are there other criteria that matter in working together in the commercial gallery and in non-commercial? Can I start with Heman? Thank you.
Dun, dun, dun. I'm just going to be very frank with you. Actually, when it comes to commercial galleries, I'm even worse than they are. I will tell them like, if this is not going to sell, we're not going to show it. So because for me, it's also important for me politically as an artist that I earn my money from being an artist, you know? So it's something that I feel that I shouldn't be ashamed about or shy about, to earn money as an artist, because I think there's a lot of shaming involved in the art world to say, oh, you know, this guy is like commercially successful, that's why he's not a good artist. It's totally not true. And sometimes, you know, like there's a lot of this kind of like judgment that's going around that is not helpful to the entire ecosystem, simply because I just feel that it produces, again, this kind of fixed relationship between things. Like if something is commercially successful, it's not a good piece of artwork, you know? And if something is commercially a disaster, it's a good piece of artwork. It's totally not true, okay? So I feel strongly that when I work on projects with commercial galleries, I become a businessman, you know, and I want to become a businessman because I feel that that capital would be later on channeled into future projects to allow me to work in the way I want to. You see what I mean? It's more free. Like, why do you expect that if you apply for a grant from a government that's less corrupt? You see what I mean? Don't you know that your government is earning money from like trading of arms and like money laundering? So for me, it's not about having again this definitive relationships with money. It's how you use it, you know.
It's very good answer. I sort of like really eye-opening that people are quite shy to talk about it. And yeah, when you like saying it's
For
really
me,
valid.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yeah. I love it. I love being a capitalist.
Okay, thank you. So what about you, Thao? How are they different when you work with curators or maybe yourself in the commercial and non-commercial sphere? We cannot hear you, sorry. You can unmute.
When I work with institutions such as museum or art center, most of the time it is commercial. So I never have any sale obligation. But I think like most of the commercial aspect is also some way comes with a friendship. Like you feel like you really trust this gallerist or you really trust this curator. And you know that this curator is trying to get you into good collection. And I don't know, I have a very vague idea about what good collection is, but there are certain institutions internationally or inside in my country that are trying to do good work, collect works that has a specific quality and willing to share these works to the public. And I think I'm have been very lucky to know and to work with curators who not only curating my work, but somehow trying to put my work into like good families with good family members. And I think that is important. And I think the commercial aspect is so important. Like I totally agree with Heman. And as I also make a living as a full-time artist, I don't teach, I just make artwork. I feel it is also important to be sustainable. Like when I work with foreign institution outside of Vietnam, most of the time I would try to ask for like a production fee, so I don't have to pay my own cost to make the artwork. But and the curator are always very helpful with that. Sometimes the artist is like very shy, like I want to produce these videos, and then the curators are not only helping with the ideas, but the curator also help that, oh, I know this place, I know that place that could help you to produce the work. So sometimes the curator is not only a friend to talk with about the concept, but become like a producer, a mentor, becomes just everything. So as an artist, I feel that is very necessary. Yeah.
I agree that curators sometimes like in the commercial galleries can help input with artists on the cost and the production costs and all that the artists tend to not really comfortable dealing with the gallery directly. Okay, thank you. So what about you, Arin? Do you experience the working with the commercial galleries and the other public institution do they have different approach on making the exhibitions?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, my is echo right on someone's.
Yeah, I will just mute them. Hold on. Okay, I found it. Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. So, like what Heman said, money and goodness is totally different things, right? And money and goodness is in the same system, capitalism system, but farmer don't grow rice for goodness, right? Like labor don't just build a construction for goodness. They just do it for money. So this is about like not about becoming a good artist and you become a good person as well. But art has been, I mean, when you take a very important part out of the system, it will become transcendent. Like if you take money out of the system, which especially this capitalism system, it will become transcendent. And for example, Thailand, we have been using art to serve this transcendental field for forever, not for a long time. You know, like mural painting in a temple, royal family, if I say, you know. So it never become a value that we can evaluate it into a right system. You know, this is the very important problem here in Thailand. And when I started my artist career, I sell t-shirt, right? I started to sell my t-shirt on the street. And I was like, fuck you, those guys who made painting in the temple and gave praise and get credit and got a medal gold from the prize and so on and so on. And at that time, if you wanted to become a famous artist or valuable artist, you have to send your work to the competition. And most of the competition is under a very transcendent concept, like the king, the religious, the whatsoever, like the goodness and so on. So we never seem to appreciate our art practice. I mean, me during that time, right? So we have to try to find a way to survive by ourselves. So I sell t-shirt on the street. I don't care, like those famous artists who won medal prize from painting a portrait of the king and so on. Yeah. So I think this is just very realistic, you know. And still nowadays, when I got an invitation, and for not just only art exhibition here in Thailand, also a big institution or any institution about as well. And when they don't talk about production costs and budget fee, and when they started to talk about only concept first, I was already started to have my, you know, skeptic. What is going? When are you going to talk about this realistic kind of thing that would make this exhibition happen? We need labor, we need money, we need, you know, all that thing. We don't need concept, we don't need goodness. I mean, we need that, not we don't need it. But realistically, materially, we need that first and then concept too, but we cannot miss one of each, you know what I mean? Yeah, something like that.
Okay, thank you. So it's different when you work, I mean, with some organizations, I mean, some, I mean, for some commercial organizations, they have to, I mean, they have to do some, I mean, they have to stay, I mean, because they're selling art, so it's very valid. And but it's the artist who's making a call as well, I think, as well as the curator and the gallery. I think we can say that. So this is the last question, and it's the same questions to all of you. So in your opinion, as an artist, do you think you need curators? Can I start with Kun Arin, please?
Oh, okay. Like as I said from the beginning, uh, like this seamless totality. I mean, I still believe in this, right? Like, I mean, human culture has been transformed from nature, and we imitate nature as that way. And as we are still live with nature, live with all this seamless totality, we still need all these things. We need energy, we need sun, we need power, we need all material that came from the earth. And so, but it's just only the question of nowadays, this concept of curator and artist and this social entirety, this society, this meeting space. Like it's just like when you ask me if I go to the battlefield, do I need guns? Or, like in that social space, we have this event, we have soldiers, we have tanks, we have guns, we have fence, we have all of that thing, we have bullet. We cannot just have gun without bullets, right? So curator as well. I mean, with this concept now, I mean, in the future, I don't know, we maybe don't need curator, but we may need curators now. I don't why, because we still, uh, like we started this kind of institution, organization. And if we live in the ancient community, we don't need curator. We need maybe, I don't know, shaman or whatsoever, different kind of roles. But because we started with this idea of institution, and we started with this idea of organization, which we had imitated from nature, like organism. So we still need curators. In the future, we maybe don't need, like, in the old day, we can take our heart. If we take our heart out of the body, we will die immediately. Nowadays, you can just put our heart in someone machine and then put it back on, and so on. So maybe the next generation, like those people who work a lot with virtual elements, the computing kind of material, they might not need curator, but as today, we still need curator. Yeah.
That's a very interesting point to make about in the future with all the AI and all that. Yes, thank you very much. So what about you, Tao? In your opinion, do you think you need curators?
I think curators are so helpful, and I have a lot of joy working with them. Um, so I guess it's totally necessary, and I also agree with Arin. Like if I am like a folk artist, or like if I am like a Sunday painter, if I am a farmer and I do art during free time, or if I sculpt for like for the temple or for spiritual reason, then maybe we don't need a curator. But since all of us in this panel already share some kind of um, I don't know, maybe should I say some kind of belief in a system that involve artists, involve galleries, involve curators, involve collectors, then all of these elements are uh, dependent on each other. So I found it hard to imagine if we erase the role of the curator, then what kind of concept would appear in order to keep the system running, or it would be totally collapsed and it would reimagine itself into another being. But at the moment, I still feel very safe, and I feel a lot of joy and sometimes happiness to work with curator. So I feel it's very necessary.
Okay, thank you. So actually, I could guess your answer from what you've said, like you've grown really fondness working with curators since the beginning of your career already. So, Heman, in your opinion, as an artist, do you need curator?
I'm only speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for all artists.
Okay.
I feel that it's very important for someone to come in to look at what I'm doing and to criticize it and even sometimes to edit it. Because I'm not, I'm just only one person. And even if I am the artist, sometimes I have this blind spot, of looking at the work. And I think what is interesting for me is to have someone to come in to tell me their perception of the work in progress. And I think a lot of artists underestimate like the role of editing in the work, and they always think that they are right. When in fact, for me, there's no such thing as right or wrong in a work. I only think about what this work does in the real world when it is received by somebody else. You see what I mean? So I often talk to curators like informally, and I think that is the most important process for me. So for example, I'm very, very close to the curator Bina Choi, who works in Utrecht and also in Seoul. And Bina is very important because she does not hold back to tell me how stupid I can be when with some ideas, she'll just say like, okay, but this is like fascist, or like, you're being an asshole. And for me, this is very, very important because there are some things about myself that I can never see. You see what I mean? It's just a matter of perception. And I feel that I need this person to talk to me about what I'm doing in order for this work to somehow become larger than itself. And that for me is the most important process. I don't need the curator as an administrator because that's the most boring part of the job. And I can buy my own tickets, and I prefer to buy my own tickets.
Okay, thank you very much, Heman, and thank you all of you. So I feel like we really understood from the last question, like we heard the three interesting points of how the importance of curators, and actually it's like how artists need curator, how and why. So thank you very much, three of you, for joining us on the panels today, and I would like you to stay a little bit longer to answer the questions from the audiences. And right now we have one question, like she's a Moroccan young artist, and she found that it's very hard to find curators to work with as they are very rare in Morocco. Her question is that how can you connect to curators internationally? And is it even possible to work at distance with curators? So anyone wants to go first, or should I? Maybe can I ask your youngest artist here, Thao? Do you have any advice to Yusra? Sorry if I pronounce your name wrongly. You are mute.
I think it's totally possible to work at a distance with curators. Since now we have social media and we have all kind of technologies to stay connected. I guess the question is because I'm not sure how the art system in Morocco is like. Is it similar to Vietnam where the government institution there would be no curators and there would be like independent curators who run like small independent art spaces and become friends with artists. I don't know, but I can only tell from a perspective of a Vietnamese artist living in Vietnam. So because we don't have museums like in Singapore where there are like National Gallery or art museum, there are curators working there, and when you come and see a show and then you attend the curator talk and then you maybe be friend with a curator. In Vietnam, it's not like that, but you can be friend with other artists, and then you come to like exhibitions in like very independent, very small art spaces, or in like each other home or apartments. And the curators always come because it's their job to attend these events and to get to know people. And that is how I get to know the curators that is living and working in Vietnam within the Vietnam context. And I think that is as long as I can reply based on my own perspective. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think it's quite it's quite like this in countries that without the big institutions or international exposure. I think there are lots of artists with international reputations in Vietnam, but not many opportunities in the country. So I think this point is quite valid for the question. So what about you, Heman? Do you have any comments on this questions?
I think
The
I think I think the distance is not the problem. I think the will is the problem.
Mhm.
If you're willing to do it, you can do it with anything, you know, with technology from the 70s. You can pick up the phone and call somebody. So actually, it's not about social media. It's not about WhatsApp. It's not about Instagram, whatever. It's how you push yourself to develop that relationship.
Okay, yeah, yes, thank you. What about you, Arin? Do you have any experience or any feedback on the questions?
Like what Heman said, I think it's about desire, about passion, and a lot of young people that I heard complain a lot, not just in Morocco, here in Thailand as well. But then when you are complaining, you just spend your words on complaining. But when you start acting, when you start smelling, seeing, hearing, that how the desire started to accumulate and bring you to what you want. Yeah. So
Yeah.
start acting. Like I sell t-shirt because I want to become an artist. I don't think about how can I meet curator. I sell t-shirt first because it's how I could survive. Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree that when you keep working and keep on working, and then you will get this, I don't want to say get discovered, but it's like that in a way. So people would see your work and become interested in you, and they would make contact with you or anything anyway. So just keep on working, I think. Thank you very much.
The taste of it. You first you have some kind of small taste of durian, and then you think of durian every day. You know, you need it, you need it, you need it. Until one day you fly to Thailand and get that durian.
And then you want to more durian. Yes.
You have to act first, you have to taste it, you have to try it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's not easy to come to where these successful artists are today. So you just keep like practicing and not giving up, I think. Yeah. Thank you. So there's one question for Alice from Alice Walsh. She asked that these days many artists in the world sharing their skill quick video through social media in Reels, TikTok, and so on. Do you think that they still need curators or artists, curators as its own? I think the question is that, yeah, maybe Arin, have you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's different roles. I mean, when I said, but we maybe don't need curators at all in the future, I have to correct it. It's just the role just changed in different system. I think like when I said, because we have institution and that's why we have curator. When I was 18, I don't know about curator at all. I don't heard about curator at all. I only know the gallery's role because we have commercial gallery, we have a director of museum or something, but we don't have a contemporary art museum. So within that system, the role will complement the system. So for this computer, internet, like NFT and that kind of thing, it's not the whole, it's just one part of the art world. It's not the whole art world, right? In nowadays, we still have this curator for contemporary art museum. We also have this curator for antique shop, and like different roles, and that kind of activities on computer network is just another part of art world. Like we just add up more variety, which is good. I love differences. I love varieties. And curators also have different roles in that varieties of system as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Heman? What do you think about this quick video, the viral video on social medias, and is it effect on the roles of curators?
I mean, you can post like 1,000 posts a day, and what I'm trying to say is that an object only attains value when it's validated by other people. So you need the system to say that something is, contributing to the larger meaning of art or not. You can't just like run in and tell everyone that this is an important artwork, because no one's going to believe you. So what I'm trying to say is that it's whether we like it or not, there is a system and there is a structure in place. And of course, we can critique it to hell about whether these value systems are actually relevant in justifying what an important artwork is or not. But the fact remains that it is impossible to do it on your own. You need this ecology, this sets of validations by that comes from from the curators to the institutions, to the collections, to the patrons, to the funders, to the, everything. I think everything is a part of something, and to disregard any of these parts is to have a blind spot.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Thank you. What about you, Thao? What do you think of this statement about artists like sharing these quick videos on media, and the curators, do they still need artists still need curator or curator artists?
I think I like the plurality, and also the virtual world is very exciting, and I respect many artists using their talents on social media or making work on this platform in order to criticize it. And I think it's also one of the aspects of contemporary art. But somehow, through the past 2 years, when we have been online most of the time, I feel it's just more necessary as a human to see physical objects, to meet people, to get to know real experience. Like you can read on the phone every day, but the feeling of reading a book, or you can watch film on Netflix, but you go to a cinema and watch a movie there, the feeling is just very different. So I guess this tangible feelings of getting to know, like to have a relationship with other artists, with curators, are something that are very precious. And I don't think any clips on TikTok can replace this kind of preciousness. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I think everyone is like agreeing in the same direction that they're not really the same. This viral and this or the presentations on the internet and the need of curators are not really exactly the same in a way. So if anyone has more questions, please feel free to fill in the chat, or maybe have your microphone on and then you can ask your questions as well. We are open for 2 or 3 more questions. Okay, the next question is from Zoe. So she asks, like, for her, curators are with agency to make the work of artists visible, and to be visible does not necessarily mean focus on exhibition making. Tonight you have mentioned curators as museum director, as politician, friends, confidente. What would you say are the skills a curator need to process in order to be useful for artists in such role? And she says she wants to be a better writer. Okay, maybe can I start with Thao to answer this question? The question is in the chat as well if you want to reread it. Okay.
Is that the main question is what are the skills
skills that a curator needs to process in order to be useful for artists?
Well, I from my own experience, I just need like a mentor or a friend. But I think from my own observation living in Vietnam and working with many Vietnamese artist peers, I think they need a lot of help in terms of administrative, even though it seems very irrelevant in some contexts. Because I don't know, should I say, the artists are sometimes very selfish. Like artists just want to be able to make the work and to be able to exhibit. So, like for example, artists sometimes feel like the curator needs to support them in many different ways, like financially, conceptually, English-wise, funding, everything, in order to support the artist to make the artwork or to make the exhibition happen. And I don't know if that is like so specific, but I maybe I share a bit about gender, like observation on gender. Like when I work with female curators, I feel like they tend to care more about like how the artists feel, like if the artist is well treated, if the Biennale Bay pay the artist fee on time, or if the work is nicely displayed according to the artist's wish. That I think somehow women feel it's better, just from my own experience. But with male curators, somehow usually I feel like the concept is the most important thing. Like if the work is like so intellectually interesting, and if it's like very original work, that's the most important thing. But they don't really tend to care about other details. such as, oh, I cannot apply for a visa. Visa is so difficult. Can you support me with this and that? They wouldn't care. They don't care. But with the women curators, usually they will care about these very small details that make the artist happier. So I think as a woman artist, I like to work with women curators.
Okay, thank you. I think you've made some point in that, like some skills, like observation. I think maybe like you tend to look for in curators. Okay, what about you, Arin? What skills do you feel like curator needs to possess in order to be useful for artists? You are on mute. Okay.
Okay. So I just met Jun Yap 2 days ago, and she asked me about my next exhibition that I'm going to show at World Gallery. And she said, do you have curator? And I said, no, I don't have curator. I'm going to show my long-term research there. And then she asked me, do you need a curator? Yes. I said, yes, I do need a curator. But unfortunately, I don't have one for that exhibition. But I do need a curator because they, like this kind of exclusive view, like everybody have this exclusive view, which is the view that only you that can see. And most of the time when we look at ourselves, we have to look at the mirror, and in the mirror, you don't have this exclusive view because it's just the mirror of yourself. So you don't have this 180 degree or you have to turn your back. And most of the time when you have the right posture and you need to see your back, you have to turn or you have to use another mirror or something. So to have a curator, like what Heman said before, to give you an exclusive view of someone, which is really important. And this exclusive view from the one that you trust. I mean, you have to trust too, because I had an experience working with curator and failed because, I don't know, long story. But yeah, the one you trust to say, okay, you have the right belt in the position, you have to move it a little bit upper because your tummy is going to be like showing off or something like that. Yeah, so I need to get an exclusive view from human, not from mirror, which is a better communication. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So what about you, Heman? Do you have anything to add on that? Or what you, yeah, thank you.
I think that there is a skill that I feel that everyone in the art world should forget, which is the skill of mind reading. And like many artists feel like they are in this privileged position because I'm the artist, I'm so important, I'm going to create this fucking amazing artwork, that they always think like, oh, the curator must read my mind and anticipate actually what is required for the work and what is required to show the work. And I can tell you that this is total bullshit for me. So to answer your question, Zoe, I feel that the most important skill anyone, not only curator, but human being would need is the skill of communication, and to communicate in the open, honest, and direct way without being mean, without being like angry. And you need to tell somebody what you want in the way that is clear, So I think a lot of relationships between curators and artists fail. It's because there's always one party who cannot have this open conversation about the project, and as a result of it, like someone is embarrassed, and because someone is embarrassed, then this entire conversation totally collapses. And I feel that this is something that, again, it's not only to do with the art world, it's to do with everyone's lives. You need to learn to talk about things. You need to learn to like discuss things in a way that is not emotional.
Yes.
in order for anything to proceed in a much more positive and constructive way, you know.
Thank you very much. It's very helpful to hear that, because sometimes people really forget about this openness and this like frankness, that they should just do it, say it, communicate it straight away. Thank you for reminding that to us. And if is there anybody have any questions? Okay, so is said thank you to that. Okay. Okay, so we already in the really last part of this discussion then. So if there's no more questions, or if there's no more comments or feedback on this, I would like to thank everyone, especially the panelists here, Heman, Arin, and Thao, for joining us for this discussion. Like, it's quite late for us in Bangkok and in Vietnam, and it's quite early for him and when he was first joining us this morning. So thank you all of you again. And for all the audiences, please fill in the feedback form that I've sent in the chat. And this discussion, this talk is part of MA curatorial practice at Chulalongkorn University. Our brand new program is opening in August. We are accepting the application until the 20th of May. So if any of you is interested in the program, please check out our website, our poster, and our prospectus on the chat. The link is up on the chat as well. So thank you all again, and good night, or have a nice day to some of you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.